God, we're good.
Oh, baby. Welcome to season 3 of the Fresh and Fired Up podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Emily Marshall, here with my co-host, the wild online fitness and nutrition coach, Haley Pindle, inspiring each other to excellence in health, fitness, and business. Let's get fired up. Hello, Haley, again.
Hi. So glad to be here.
I know we're picking up where we left off in last week's episode, where I cut you off and was like, you know what? I told my story. We don't have time for yours.
No, you know what? Don't apologize. Take up space. Take up
I
some
know.
space. We've
Oh,
got
I
some.
wasn't apologizing. I was just stating
Yeah.
the facts.
Heck yeah. Heck yeah. That's the way we like to do it.
Right? Because here's the thing, as Canadians, we say sorry like it's our job.
I
And
know.
I find it funny because when I hang out with Americans, they're like, why did you stop saying sorry? And I'm like, oh, I'm not actually sorry.
Yeah, it's just default. I just have to say it.
It's just like
It's a
an
nervous
automatic.
tick.
Yeah, it is. It's just automatic. Oh, but I do want to get back into where you're at now, because if you are joining us for the first time today, go back and listen to last week's episode and then listen to this episode, because we get into some of our backstory. Haley shared some of her journey of what brought her to where she is now, and I shared some of mine as well. So that'll give you guys some context to where we're jumping back in today, which is what you're doing now, how you are helping the women that you're helping, some of the things that you're seeing, and how that can help our listeners today.
For sure. Yes. So, like Emily said, go back and listen to the other episode. So, I go through all of my background and my past and kind of my own personal journey throughout the past probably 10 years or so. But I am an online nutrition coach and personal trainer, and I'm actually in my certification for women's health, which kind of gets into more pregnancy training and perimenopause and menopause, things that aren't talked about enough, I feel like, on the internet. And just as women in general, like half the people I talk to don't know what perimenopause is or when they're going to go through it, which is kind of alarming because every woman is going to go through it at some point, and you should definitely know something about it and something about your beautiful body and what it's going to go through. So I'm in a certification for that. So just to kind of further my education and better serve my clients, but I am an online coach. And right now I focus a lot on women's health, hormones, menstrual cycle, training with your menstrual cycle, and all of that. What it entails, just because of my backstory. I went through hypothalamic amenorrhea, which is a missing period or loss of period. Can also be known as like female athlete triad or REDS, which is relative energy deficiency in sport. So I take a very heavy approach on that because I am so passionate about it. But I do have clients from a standpoint of fat loss or muscle gain, binge eating, because that's also something I've gone through, hormonal issues, muscle gain. Did I mention that? I think I did. Just people who
It's
want
okay.
to, it's fine.
I was going to
It's just
say I lost my period for 10 years too. And for some reason, I have these like 4 little crazy beings running around because of it.
yeah, exactly. But just like supporting women throughout their whole kind of menstrual cycle, because studies are very heavily done on men, and it's just started to shift towards more female health because it takes a lot of money and effort to study women because of our cycle. There's a lot of factors that can kind of um like, what's the word I'm looking for?
There's so much variability, right? Like
Yes.
it's extremely complex. I talked about
Yeah.
this with when I had Dr. Carolyn Klein on. She is a PhD in like sex therapy. She's one of the episodes
Yeah.
from season 2. And so like just confirming what you're saying, there's so much complexity in women's health research. It's necessary, but it's complicated.
Exactly. Yeah. So a lot of women come to me with like disordered eating habits and things that they've learned in the past, because there's a lot of like bro science out there. If you guys go on Instagram or TikTok or whatever the heck you indulge on in terms of social media, there's a lot of like 7-minute workouts for abs and like women with really shredded six-pack abs, which is not necessarily very um, healthy for us in terms of being a female. So there's a lot of um, misinformation out there that people are listening to. And then they come to me and everything's kind of all up in the air and their hormones are all whacked out and they can't lose weight anymore because they've been dieting for 10 years. So that's kind of the demographic that I help, is just women who have had that past of disordered eating and all the behaviors that come along with it and who want to finally find some food freedom and feel free from like dieting and diet culture and everything they've learned in the past. Um, so that's kind of what I do now.
Yeah. And so with that, do you find that there's certain trends like challenges that women face the most, or is it very broad spectrum?
It's broad spectrum in terms of my own clients because everyone comes in with a different goal. Because some of them are on weight gain journeys to get their cycles back, and some of them are on weight loss journeys. Some of them have, had binge eating disorder, but there's a lot of commonalities in terms of like principles. So I know we wanted to talk about perfectionism. That is a big quality that I see, where women will come in and think that they need to be this perfect person and just hit their macros, hit their workouts completely to a T. And they're very surprised to know that I am much more of a like a flexible approach to it because life gets in the way. Like a lot of them have children and they have other obligations to tend to, and they can't just completely dedicate themselves to a fitness regimen, which is not necessarily practical for a lot of people.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things, right? I was thinking about this when we brought up, I think we brought up perfectionism a little bit on last week's episode. And it's interesting because I think there's different facets, right? Like there's
Yeah.
like behaviorally, like the perfectionism in the way of striving for virtuous behavior, I think is something we should strive for to
Yeah.
be like the type of people that are striving to be loving and compassionate to others all the time. I think that's like a thread of perfectionism.
Yeah.
In a way that's like in a positive way. Like we want to strive for that type of behavior
For
as
sure.
much as we possibly can. But when we're talking in the realm of fitness, health, eating, and body image, there really is that's really what we're talking about right here, where there is no perfect body. I think from the way of when you're looking at, okay, we have the Barbie complex where you're
Mhm.
like, here's Barbie. We all need to look like Barbie, which is not true. It's fascinating because I went through this course one time just about like when I was younger. Obviously, I've always had the do I want to be a doctor and go into chiropractic, or I've had this love for like fashion and style, and which is why what I'm doing now, right?
Mhm.
And I was just thinking about how going through a course of stylizing different body types and seeing how different we are. And some of the questions that get asked are, what are your favorite things about your body? Like, or what are your favorite body parts? And what are your not so favorite body parts? And
Yeah.
it's interesting because when you start to get women, and I want to hear your take on this too, because of what you just said, right? You have women who are trying to gain weight versus women who are trying to lose weight or whatever that looks like, and go, okay, what are the things that you love about your body? I think that's a really important question to ask and write it down. And then how can you help yourself? Like, even I think about clothes and wardrobe. How can you help yourself, even with the clothes you're wearing, in highlighting your favorite features about yourself? And what I'm not saying is to hide your least favorite features, but there are ways to not accentuate something that you don't love about your body, right? So there's ways you can help yourself that are very practical, and then there's the ways like you're talking about, Haley, which is in your mind, like your mindset about it.
For
And it
sure.
sounds like
Yeah.
that's a lot of the work that you start with in the foundational phases of your programming.
Oh, especially in the first phase, whether you want to lose weight or gain weight, change is hard regardless. And what I see with a lot of people who are in my program to gain their period back, with that comes a little bit of weight gain and getting a little bit uncomfortable. Putting some sticky notes on your mirror or writing down on your mirror when you look at yourself in the morning what you do love about yourself is a great asset to have. But I also like to say, like, it's okay to not love your body 24/7. I think that's a very unrealistic thing to expect from yourself as well, is just to look at yourself and say, I love yourself and bark affirmations when you kind of don't believe that they're true. Um, Rather find things that you do actually love about yourself and find some truth in that. It makes it a lot more sustainable and believable for yourself to have those affirmations in the morning, right? And at a standpoint of someone trying to lose weight, I see a lot of self-sabotage. So they will try and lose weight, but they get to a certain point where they kind of regress because they're not really comfortable with who they're becoming. And with weight loss, a lot of them can just like go back to old habits because they're scared of what they have to give up in terms of maintaining that weight loss.
Yes.
Um, yeah, hopefully
I was
that
thinking
makes
about trade totally. I was thinking about trade-offs when you said that. Like
yeah,
there's always a trade-off. There's always a price to pay on either side.
yeah,
We talk about it a lot in chiropractic care. Is like I'm telling you right now, don't think the world is falling down if you're in pain. Everybody's in pain in some way,
yeah,
but there's a trade-off. Are you in pain because you're sore from the gym, like the workout you did? Or are you in pain because you've done nothing and your hips are now arthritic or whatever the case is, right? So it's that people will say, choose your hard, right? So
yeah,
even when you're trying to, like you said, rewire those habits and go, okay, well, now I'm eating a different way or I'm exercising a different way, that means I'm giving up. You might be giving up your favorite junk food. I know you're not saying like I'm not saying diet
yeah.
culture, but there can be a trade-off
There
to
is a
it.
trade-off, and you have to be a little bit disciplined. Like, there's no reality where you can eat whatever the heck you want in terms of like going and having a cookie and then cheesecake and then pizza for dinner, and then you also feel good and like are confident in your body. There's no reality that it happens, right?
Yeah.
You do want to take care of your body, and with that is like discipline as well. Practicing discipline in every aspect of your life is also a very valuable thing to learn. I'm sure
Yes.
you can relate to that in business and health and like your relationship even. Um,
Well, you're
but yeah,
gonna feel it's going to start to breed and ingrain those thoughts of really believing that you're confident in your abilities and
yeah,
really believing that you're happy with the action steps you're taking. And when you were talking about seeing that person in the mirror and going, okay,
yep,
you know, am I happy with this? And I was thinking about what you said, Haley. You're like, you might not look in the mirror and be happy 100% of the time.
mhm,
And that's okay. But I think a really important piece that you've pointed out before is looking at that with your menstrual stress. Excuse me, your menstrual cycle, because how often are we like, no, I'm good. I'm rolling. I love my arms. My arms are jacked. I love my, I got a nice
yeah,
perky butt. I'm happy with myself. And then all of a sudden it's like I hit period week and I'm like, what is wrong with me? Why is my hair
yeah,
blah, blah, blah? And it's like, dude, you're, you're literally just hormonal. You're not, your body is the same body.
exactly,
Your hair is the same hair that it was a week ago or 2 weeks ago when you were ovulating and you were like, oh my gosh, I feel great, right?
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
so
for
it's
sure.
also like being aware of the reality of where you are in your cycle. I'm not saying we're going to blame all of our moods on hormones, but there is a big correlation there, I think.
Oh, for sure. And your chemistry does change, and that's something you again have to be aware of and just be okay with that having being a woman and having that happen. Like you might be a little bit more bloated or water retention, and it doesn't mean that you've regressed. It just means that you're maybe in your luteal phase and just be uncomfortable for that time, you know? Like it's okay to sit in your uncomfort and you don't have to run away from it. I think that's a lot of what this whole society kind of struggles with is the instant gratification of like getting away from these uncomfortable feelings when it's a little bit more beneficial to just sit there with them and accept them as they come. That's a big
Yes.
lesson to learn in life is just sit with your uncomfortable feelings, whether or not, you don't have to go and make yourself feel good by, you know, um, having like addictions. Like a lot of people go on scrolling and then there's emotional eating. There's a bunch of other things that you can, do to get out of this uncomfortable state. But
Yeah, because your brain's searching for a dopamine hit, basically.
exactly.
Yeah.
exactly. That's exactly what's happening. And in your luteal phase, you are a little bit lower on dopamine. So take that into consideration and just, be okay with sitting on the couch and watching TV, feeling like a whale. So
I never do that, but I mean, if you do that, hard judge over here. I'm just kidding.
yeah, no, I
Kaylee's like,
get
what?
really tired. There
I'm
is
gonna be
one.
I'm gonna be texting you and be like, get off your butt.
Yeah, well, you see, it's a push and pull between like letting myself rest
Yes,
and
yes.
also like pushing myself because I have been on the other side of the spectrum. So I think this is a common thing for a lot of my clients as well who come from disordered past is like I know what it's like to be so extreme and like have that go 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 all the time.
You bet.
And it does not feel good. So I don't want to go back to that. So it is more of a struggle to let myself rest.
I
So
get
it's
you.
just, yeah, everyone is so different and their pasts are so different. So, like, a lot of my clients will have, oh, I'm struggling with getting off the couch and, like, watching TV and going to work out. And then I have clients who are very fidgety and they just fidget to burn calories, which is, the other side of that.
Yeah, it's a huge spectrum. Well, and
Yeah.
it's interesting is when you're saying that, kind of what resonated with me is I used to have more times when I was younger that I would end up yeah on the couch certain days or whatever. And I think, like you said, we're all on this different journey and different timeline. And, when I think back to that phase of my life, I used to stay up really late, and now I find myself when I'm in the phase, like, literally, like, yeah, when I'm in the phase of my cycle that I am more tired, I'm like, my kids are going to bed at 8 p.m. and I'm going to bed at 8 p.m. with them. That's the only honestly, that's the only reason I wouldn't end up like, I feel like I need an afternoon nap. Just because 'cause I'm like, no, I genuinely went to bed at 8 and slept till 7 AM, like
Yeah.
certain phases, right? So it's like,
Yeah.
where are you getting that rest or how are you getting that rest? Because it is necessary. And, I think the other way that can come through in our exercise regime, right, is I have days like this week where I'm on my cycle. Full disclosure, on my cycle, first day here,
Oh
guys,
no,
and
we don't talk about cycles and blood.
we do. We're talking about it
Yeah,
right
I know.
now.
We
Uh,
should.
we
Everyone,
should.
blood, it's
We are.
fine.
Yeah. So let me tell you this. I lifted on okay, what day is we're on Thursday. It's Thursday, right? So I lifted on Monday. I did my heavy lifts Monday. I did well, not heavy, heavy, like I wasn't PR or anything.
Mhm.
But I did my percentages like 65, 75, 85, whatever. And only went up to 85%. And I did that on Monday and Tuesday, and then yesterday, I was like, I know I'm gonna get my period soon. Yesterday, I was like, "Ooh, I'm feeling like a tired wall." So what I did was I walked. I literally went are you good?
Yep, some fell.
You're making faces. So all I did was I walked. I did a 45-minute walk on the path,
Yeah.
and it felt so good for my body. I didn't say to myself, "Oh my goodness, Sam, you must lift today." Like, okay, and quite frankly, often I'll do 2 in a row, like 2 days in a row with lifting, and
Mhm.
then I'll walk or, stretch or do something lighter, more of an active rest, and then go back to lifting. But I'm saying that to say this morning would normally I would get up and lift. I slept this morning. I felt exhausted. So I'm just kind of
Yeah.
affirming what you're saying. Am I mad with myself? No, not at all. I'm like, that's perfectly fine. Because what I do, and this might be helpful for some of you listening, is when I'm lifting, my goal is always to get 4 lifts in a week. And I don't pick the days. I'm like, I don't care. I will get them in. If I'm tired or sick or something, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I'll get those lifts in Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I will get them in within my week. Normally it would be like Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. And guess what? Now I've got them all in. If I wake up feeling great on a Saturday morning, I'll go again and I'll add in like some sort of supplementary thing. So I totally agree with you. That was kind of long-winded, but
All good.
you get the
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah, of course. And there's a fad word kind of going around called cycle syncing, where it's like in your late luteal phase and in your menstrual phase, all you have to do is walk and do yoga, but it kind of it doesn't take into account how you feel, like you
Yeah.
just said, right? Like if you are feeling tired, don't feel guilty for sleeping. But if you do feel good, like sometimes I've had really great lifts in my late luteal phase. I ran a
Right.
half marathon in my late luteal phase. Like there's so many other moving factors other than your hormones. Like you don't want to start blaming your hormones. Like
Yes.
maybe your sleep was off. Maybe you haven't been feeding yourself properly. Like there's a lot of other moving factors other than just what phase you are in your menstrual cycle.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. I hear that.
yeah. But also take into consideration, just know where you are in your cycle. And if you are feeling really tired, like there are physiological things that happen to your body in your late luteal phase in particular, which is your high hormone phase. And you reach the point of exhaustion quicker, your heart rate is higher, your body temperature is higher. So those are all factors that can play into your performance. So just know where you are at in your cycle, and you can just be more gentle and flexible with yourself.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's interesting because when you think about max strength, right? Like I've had in the past where I'm following a lifting cycle and I'm like, oh, it's 1 rep max week and it falls on my cycle and I've tried it and I'm like, I'll do it, but
Yeah.
I usually end up hitting the same PR I did in my last cycle rather than going up, which I mean, I'm still lifting, throwing up heavy weights. So like clearly my body can perform to a certain level, but I
Mhm.
don't necessarily feel like I've gained strength. And when I've shifted it and been like, you know what, I'm going to shift my weeks. I'm going to cut my percentages and then wait until like the following week or the week after, then I'll move up to a new max. Right. So
Yeah.
again, it's kind of playing with I like what you said, Haley, when you were like, not being so there's a difference between okay, be disciplined and consistent, as in like don't completely fall off track and do nothing
Mhm.
for months on end. But when you're looking at like people, when people are like counting macros and making sure they're in this like particular cycle, and if they have to shift their week, it's like the sky is falling, and it's like no, it doesn't need to be that complicated.
Yeah, exactly. And usually that's the mindset that kind of keeps them stuck and not where they want to be. So flexibility is definitely one thing that is a big issue when I see a lot of like people come into my program where they just don't want to be flexible, or they're attaching so much self-worth to like their ability to hit their macros perfectly and hit all of the workouts perfectly, when flexibility is the spice of life. Life's going to happen, and typically learning to have your goals intertwine with your life is the factor that you're missing in terms of achieving whatever you want to achieve.
Well, I was thinking about cortisol, Haley.
Yeah.
Like it's like if you are so high strung about this constantly, your cortisol levels are high, and
Hmm.
that's going to affect the way that your body performs as well as like what is happening with the biochemistry of your body with weight gain or weight loss. And I was thinking about this as like really because you also brought up like, well, what is your sleep like and what are all these different factors, and it's like, well, we're really looking at if you can get yourself into a calm state in all of this, I think that's the single biggest factor. Because if you think about like the way we're getting dips and rises in our melatonin levels compared to our cortisol levels, we want that cortisol higher in the morning, and then it's going to, start to taper down throughout the day. Your melatonin levels are going to rise. That's going to get you into a deeper sleep cycle. That's going to allow you to get up in the morning to actually do a morning workout if that's your goal. So I think that looking at if you are what you said, you're like that anxious, fidgety, I must be moving, I must do that, it must be a particular way all the time. Well, if you're still in that state at like 8 p.m., that's messing with the whole cycle.
Yeah, for sure. Like your circadian rhythm, like your
Yes.
like cortisol and stuff, it naturally spikes in the morning. And then also there's a lot of people who like drink a coffee on an empty stomach and not fuel before their fasted workouts. And like sometimes everyone does what works for them. However, there are like some things. Like I was just listening to a podcast with Dr. Stacy Sims. I freaking love her. She's my idol. But she
No
was
idols, come
talking,
on.
she is my idol. In the best way possible.
Okay,
I
okay.
don't wish to be her. I just adore her. But she was touching on like cortisol and women's health and kind of why that differs from men and how fasting works for men, but not necessarily women. We start to see some disturbances in terms of their menstrual cycle. And it's because women are so sensitive to stress, even perceived stress, like your mental state. You know, if you're getting really high strung about this one macro that you went over today, that's stress and you're imposing, cortisol to be released, right? And your body is very sensitive to that. And you will find more menstrual cycle disturbances, which is a huge red flag that something is off and something needs to change as well, right?
Yeah, that's good. Okay, I love that you brought that up because I just had a conversation yesterday with a client and we were talking about stress. And what I just want to touch on this one point of when you think about stress, don't trick yourself into thinking you should never face it. Like it's always going to be there. The
It's good for
story is,
you.
it's yes, it is because it's going to allow you to uh, develop the adaptability that your body needs, that resiliency.
Hmm.
And I want to share this story because I think it drives the point home. Okay. The story is about a karate sensei or like a martial arts master. I don't do martial arts, so I'm not sure if I used all the right terms here, but I know a lot in martial arts is like they need to get centered. Like it's like, you want to be on center. And this is a martial arts master, and there's a student, and the student is getting frustrated and stressed out about always like falling off center. And the master comes over to talk to the student, and the student is like, well, you don't understand because you never get off center. And the master is like, oh no, I get off center all the time, I just get way back on quicker. And so I think as we develop these skills and even how we cope and adapt to stress, and you're going to get those spikes in cortisol, but if you are being intentional and putting strategies in place that you can recenter yourself quicker, that is going to go a very long way with developing those better circadian rhythms.
For sure, for sure. And I think you bring up a good point too on like building up your resilience to stress because the same thing as going into the gym and when you started going to the gym you likely couldn't lift the weight that you do now, but over time increasing that stress and increasing the load you were able to build it up to a higher weight. And it's the same thing with stress, you get to build your resilience up through time and just pushing yourself. So it is super important to push yourself a little bit past your comfort zone.
Yes.
But yeah, exactly. But
But we're
um
also we're also speaking to, we know that we've been in the category, and we know many women who are on the opposite end of the spectrum who are like, yeah, they're constantly pushing themselves out of their comfort zone,
well,
right?
it's
They're
I
redlining, right? Like there's this ebb and flow between, are
yeah.
you redlining all the time, or are you like totally in the back seat not doing
Yeah.
anything, right? And where's
And
that middle
it's
ground?
it's really funny too that you say that because like my clients who are in the red zone and just constantly addicted to chaos and stress, their comfort zone is that. So pushing them
Right.
out of that comfort zone is going back towards the middle ground, which is more on the rest and digest side, but it's still uncomfortable for them,
I
right?
get you. Yeah, that's a good
Yeah.
point. Yeah, it's just the opposite.
Yeah.
Interesting. I like that
Yeah.
perspective. Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah.
because
So it's just
it's really like, which side of the spectrum are you more addicted to?
exactly.
Huh. That's
Yeah,
a good point.
for sure.
Okay. So, well, okay. So let's tie it back in to when you're pushing yourself outside of your own comfort zone and doing it in a healthy way. We're looking at that, developing this discipline and excellence in action, right? We brought up excellence in action last time. So what does that look like?
What does it look like?
Yeah. Like what comes to mind when you think of that? Like I'm thinking about, okay, so you're we don't want to be so far on the spectrum that we're like addicted to the stress and the chaos and the like go 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 and we can never rest, right?
Yeah.
Um how would you, how would you go, okay, we just want to do an excellent job at this and we want to find joy in it. We want to make it a lifestyle that's sustainable and still moving the dial forward towards our goals.
Yeah.
So,
So
what are practical ways that we can put that into action and make it an achievable reality that isn't drenched in like dread? You know what I
yeah,
mean?
for sure. So first and foremost, like a lot of the basic things that you do, like increasing your water intake to get that at a good level and regularly exercising in whatever way, you know, motivates you the most. A lot of my clients come to me and they like bear classes or they like other classes, and I would love to get them into strength training, but my more important thing is doing something that they enjoy and they can stay consistent with. So it's not necessarily like finding some cookie cutter thing and following it. It's more diving deeper into what you want and what you value and making a program around that and making your whole life structure around that, because there's so many different people with so many different lives, and they try to fit themselves into something that stresses them out so much,
Right.
and they're not flexible with it. So I think flexibility is the biggest point, for a lot of people who come to me, and just finding something that really works for them that they can enjoy and stick to. I think a lot of people also come into the fitness space thinking that they should beat themselves up, and just go balls to the wall, and that's not necessarily practical and sustainable. You have to think of your fitness journey as something that you can sustain for the rest of your life, not just go back to what you wanted to before. Um, and in doing that, being in that little uncomfortable state for a little bit will make you feel so much better. There's one phase, like the first phase of my program, we go back into habit building and building these little habits every day. And what people find is their energy increases. When your energy increases, you feel more inclined to do good work and motivate you for your career and life and, your relationships and everything like that. So it's just a domino effect of things that happen when you do take care of your body.
Yeah, that's good. And I think the first step is deciding. Like
Yeah.
deciding, and that can be hard. I brought up decisiveness on episode 103, I think. It's hard to know which ones, because we talked about it Emily Frisella talked about it at Women in Business. I think I mentioned that on the last episode. And I think it's such a key point to being like, okay, well, what is it that you want to do? What
Mhm.
is it that you are striving for? Or, setting those goals in place. And you can have a vision, a broad vision, right? That's like, okay, this is something that I aspire to. Now, how do we break that down into goals that we can attach action steps to? And I
Yeah.
have an episode called Habitual Growth that I did with a friend, Lisa Small. They actually have an app, the Habitual Growth app. That is a way that can help you with that can help you track it. That's a resource that I can think of. But I know, well, you can speak to that's probably part of your programming too. Is it
Habit
like,
building, for
yeah,
sure. Habit
yeah,
building,
that
habit stacking, and just, yeah, breaking everything down into small digestible steps rather than like, oh, I want to lose weight. And then, well, now what? Like that's not an actionable step. That's just something that you want to do. Like everyone has goals. What makes you successful, right? It's your habits.
Yeah, yeah. Have you ever read the book, what is it? The Habit. Oh my goodness, I forget the title now.
Atomic habits,
Yeah, that one's good. There's another one too that I'm thinking of, but there's some good
the
books on that.
compound
Like,
effect is a good one too.
yeah, the cue routine reward cycle
Yeah.
and all that.
Yeah.
It's good stuff.
Yeah.
We'll do
Urge,
it.
action, reward.
Okay, we need to do an episode on that. Put that
Yeah,
on the
we do.
list.
Okay, will do.
We have so much to talk about, guys. You are not gonna, you're not gonna want to miss these episodes. So I am pumped. This was great. Did you have anything else you wanted to throw in for today, or we could wrap it up?
I think we can wrap it up. They've heard us
Okay.
ramble too much already.
Yeah, do not, not at all. Are you kidding me? We are so fun to hang out with.
Yeah, I know. If you guys made it to this point, you're real ones.
Yeah,
Appreciate you.
you are blessed by our presence.
Yes. You're
So
welcome,
yeah,
actually. You're
yeah, you're
welcome.
welcome. What can I say? But hey, that's gonna be stuck in your head now. Thank you,
Yep.
Haley. Thank you for that. But do not miss next week's episode because we will be having a guest on and you don't want to miss it.
Yes.
We will see
So
you then.
excited.
Yeah, share this episode with a friend. Make sure you rate and review the show. Click that subscribe button. And in the meantime, be free, feel fresh, and live on fire.